eventually the suitcase just gets too difficult to not trip over or not fall on. So then, I'll unpack that. So whatever the motivation is, eventually it'll all get done. Yeah, I went on a trip and so I packed and I wasn't gone for that long. I was gone for like 2 days, but somehow I guess in getting ready for that trip, I disrupted or moved every single thing that I own because I can find nothing now. And I don't know why. It was 2 nights and arguably 3 days that I was gone. And it's like I moved. I have been less disrupted by actual moves that we have taken. So it's been a very frustrating day. And I haven't really unpacked. That's probably the problem is I have my suitcase on the bed open and I've like half-heartedly taken a few things out of it. But if it were up to me, I would just leave that suitcase until the next time I had to travel anywhere and deal with it then. But I'm slowly getting things put back together.
Is this one of those things where I could help by doing some of it or pestering, or should I just let it be and you'll get to it?
I'll get to it, because eventually I will need like everything in there. And that seems to be the pace at which I'm unpacking. Like, toothbrush and stuff is easy. I need that right away. But then it's like, well, I could probably go for a while without unpacking my sleep phone charger or something. So I'll wait until I desperately need those things and then I'll unpack them like one at a time.
It would probably help if we had like a system or something with like open topped containers with labels that one could readily access. So you don't have to put stuff away to a very, precise degree. You can just kind of put stuff in big categories.
Just dump everything in a bin called unpacking. Then at least I could put the suitcase away.
And maybe that semblance of progress will help you feel less bad about it. Shall we make a podcast?
Well, let's make a podcast.
Hello and welcome in to another episode of Gifted Kid, Messy Adult, a neurodiversity podcast. The show where potential went to die. I'm one of your hosts, Ellie Michaels. I use she, her.
I am your other host, Jessica Michaels. I use she, they.
And today we're talking about a topic that we've been meaning to say.
Oh.
Really, it's been on the top of our list for a goodly while.
Can I just ask how many of those you have saved up? Should I just groan all at once or should I plan on those happening over the course of an hour?
Oh no, these are fresh off the dome. I'm just going to be coming up with them throughout the show.
I'm going to say you haven't been planning.
Let's not put labels on it.
Oh. So today, for our listeners who have not yet figured out the joke, we are talking about BINS, BINS. In other words, the only organizational system that I can possibly manage in my home or professional life. So yes, we are talking about the BIN system. Oh, Ellie, from your many years of living in this household, how would you describe the BIN system of organization?
Okay. Well, it starts with a piece of furniture that's fairly common, tends to be marketed towards younger folks, and that's the cubes. Target sells them. I think IKEA has their own kind of variety. They basically are just press board laminated cubes. They're either, 10 inches by 10 inches by 10 inches, or they're a foot cubed. Point being, you put these little things together. It's a set of cubes, maybe in a 3x1 configuration. But then they sell you these fabric covered bins, which are pretty much just an open topped cardboard box that they've glued fabric onto and then put a little pull guy on one of the surfaces. And the idea is that these are functional display and storage systems. So we mentioned before, you can see the whole of the wall behind you there is actually built out of those bins, those cubes. That wall is not an actual wall. It's a partition in the room that I built by securing a bunch of those cube furniture pieces together into kind of the shape of a wall. And we can use them, as you see, for display and decoration, but there's also just straight up storage.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty of the system, at least for me, was brought home the other week when we were talking about Doom piles. And I do have a fairly in-depth sorting system for cables, for electronic stuff. But those systems are also themselves just inside a couple of bins that say cables. And so while I was unable to specifically organize each cable by type and put them away entirely, I could just dump them in the bin that says cables. And that was sorted enough. It was away enough. And then I got my desk back.
Yeah, I think this started for us back when we had our first apartment. You know, one of those where we were furnishing an apartment through like overnight runs to Target, because when we started living together, you couldn't really finish anything without running into something that you needed that you didn't have yet. So it was just kind of a quick, IKEA, quick Target. But then as we, as sort of we got more permanent furniture fixtures, like, we actually got a decent couch instead of a love seat that we quickly put together. The bins have sort of been a mainstay and we've expanded their use. And I found them to be a really good complement to my ADHD in ways that a lot of other organizational systems that I've tried in the past have not. One of the things that you mentioned earlier in kind of a joke was labels. And that is really, really helpful. We label the majority of our bins, or anything that is something where more than one person, more than one of us is going to be using a particular bin. But that's really helpful, I think, for anything that's out of sight, out of mind. Like the parts to the vacuum cleaner is specifically what I'm thinking of. Like, I have never once remembered where the extra parts to the vacuum cleaner are. But I do remember that there's a bin with a label for the parts to the vacuum cleaner. So instead of having to do what I've done in the past, which is just buy more of a thing every time the thing breaks, we've been able to actually find the pieces of the vacuum cleaner that you only need like once a year. Instead of having to constantly repurchase, you just always have a label, for that kind of stuff. So you know where those things are, even if you only get to them every now and again.
And just for clarification, because I hate when things aren't clarified, we're talking about our Roomba and the little spinny brushes on the underside and the filter. So it's not that we're constantly breaking our vacuum cleaner, just the filter needs to be changed every once in a while, and they don't make reusable ones.
Do other vacuums not have pieces that need to be changed out? I guess the last vacuum piece I had to be changed out was a bag on a vacuum, but I suppose no vacuums have bags anymore, do they?
I imagine there's got to be some. Like, there's got to be a market for, like, you're vacuuming up stuff that you would much rather just stay contained and thrown away than stuff that you would then rather open again to the air and throw away.
Well, I mean, I was vacuuming my room with a bagged vacuum when I was a teenager and then a college student. So yes, that probably qualifies as stuff that you want to vacuum and just have it stay contained and throw it away. Because teenagers' rooms, my college apartment, nobody needs to see what was on those floors. But yeah, the bins I think are actually a good way to keep. I think about when I was young, and I think young people notoriously will often have messy rooms anyway, but mine was always height. I'd have the locker that was so messy, like you couldn't close it. I'd have a backpack that was always, 10 pounds heavier than it needed to be because I just had stuff in it, just random stuff. And then when I
Untreated
started,
ADHD, you say?
I know, but when I started living on my own, that never went away. It's like it's like people that I knew all of a sudden became neat, or you'd walk into their apartment. I go over to some of my friends' apartments in college, and it was like, it was like, wow, you could see there's potpourri out. Like, when did this happen? When did you start decorating? Like, it was just a weird transition point, which is another thing because it was always the girls from my experience that I was like, oh, wait, is this another day of girl that I just missed? Like, that this is what my place is supposed to look like, and this is what, I'm supposed to do, because my place was always a mess. There was just stacks of things everywhere. There are piles of things everywhere. So getting the bins, because you are neater than I am by orders of magnitude. So getting the bins was a really nice compromise for me because it was a way that things could be away, but still sort of in a pile. If you put it in a bin and you put a label on it, then it could be desk stuff or whatever, but it was contained. It was away. It wasn't an eyesore, but it was still in a place that I could find. It wasn't something I needed to organize to death. So it was sort of a nice way to accommodate both of us, you not wanting there to be piles of stuff everywhere, but me not really being able to organize or clean beyond just that. But it's contained, it's got a label. We're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I'm not sure you would have liked living with me these past 10 years.
Well, it's just that we have different kinds of sensory neurodivergence, where yours is less acute and mine is more acute. So you look at a room and a lot of the details don't attach themselves to your memory.
Right.
I look at a room and my brain just catches all of it, like everything. And if I don't pay attention to how I expose my brain to sensory input, I can very easily get overwhelmed. And that leads to dysregulation and just no fun for anyone.
Yeah. In the past, because one thing, you don't like clutter. And so the nice thing about the way we've got our place set up is you can declutter our apartment pretty quickly, within a few minutes. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've made it so that it doesn't take a lot of effort to put things away, because there isn't necessarily one place that everything needs to go. With the bins, they're kind of interchangeable. Everything has a label, so everything goes in its bin with the label. But where those bins get put back kind of depends on what we're doing and what there's a lot of flexibility. So if we need to get something cleaned up and we can just get the stuff and get the bins and get the bins away, they're in the same general place. They're, in the living room bin wall, they're labeled. So we can find everything. We know where everything is really, but it isn't so specific that for some reason not having to go in the bottom right corner of the closet, but it can go just in a labeled bin on the wall. The difference between those two things to my brain is massive. The idea of having to put stuff away in its exact place is like torture to me, but just getting stuff in the right bin and getting the bin in a bin place, that's okay. So that is something that I'm able to complete in a way that kind of works with my executive function, I think.
Yeah. And there's an established medical or scientific phenomenon where we can outsource our memory. And I have no idea how they figured it out or how they proved it. But the idea being that if I know a fact or a piece of information, and then I write it down and put it in a specific place, my brain will shift from remembering that fact or piece of information to remembering where I put it. And so remembering where something is something that our brains are built to do, but it's also difficult. And there can be lots of those kinds of information. And I think it might be tied to the spatial awareness difficulties that you can have, where memorizing the way that you drive to Target is tricky for your brain. So it would just make sense to me if you were also having difficulty memorizing the placement of USB-C charger cables in one of 30 drawers.
But if they're labeled in a bin somewhere,
and you can just glance at the whole row and go, there it is, then you don't need to memorize that, and it doesn't need to eat up processing power.
That makes a lot of sense. It's also been helpful for my ADHD in terms of the ADHD tax of buying duplicate items. What was it? Long underwear. That is something that I have not needed to purchase in many, many, many years. But,
when you need it.
Yeah, exactly. But when you need it, you need it. And so we were just sort of going through like our various, we live in a place where we do need to be aware of winter, and that winter can be deadly and can arrive at virtually any time. So I was just thinking, boy, where is kind of that winter stuff? And I was able to just quickly go through and look and find, oh yeah, there's a bin. It's labeled. Perfect. Because to me, my first thought was, I'm going to need to buy some more of that because I haven't used it in a long time. I don't think I have any. Lo and behold, we did. It was just in a labeled bin. And I think there's a lot of things where, because if you don't see them, then it's gone, right? Out of sight, out of mind. And so my first thought is, we need to replace whatever it is when we need it. But being able to use the labeled bins, even if it's, stuff that we don't look at very often, will keep us from having to buy the duplicates or picking up some of things that we already have. Because even if the items themselves aren't out front and labeled, nobody wants to look at all their cleaning supplies all the time. But if they're in a nicely labeled bin, you still have the labels that are out. It's easily findable, so it's quick to look and see what we have or what we don't have. Otherwise, I will just constantly keep purchasing duplicates of everything in this apartment until I come home with a second dog.
No,
I will not come home with a second dog.
One day when we have more space.
Yes. Yeah. He wouldn't go in a bin anyway. The second dog wouldn't go in a bin.
We got a little one. We just put a label in the bin. Dog.
See, that might work.
We just got to make sure that the other bins with labels that just say dog are like dog mittens and dog chew toys.
Yes, the dog stuff is definitely all in bins, although I've learned that I have to keep certain things in higher bins because he can open the bins that are on the ground floor should he be so inspired. And he is inspired to do that if he thinks there are toys in there. He was pulling out new dog toys for the longest time, and I did not know why. I thought I knew all of the places he could be getting dog toys from, but no, I had a bin that was kind of hidden back. It just wasn't a place I looked very often, and he could get in that bin, get a toy out, and close it without me noticing. So yeah, the dog stuff has to go in higher bins because he's apparently smarter than his mama.
See, even detritus likes the bins.
Even detritus likes the bin system. No, I think it's good. I think, you know, there are, it's nice to have the flexibility because I don't know, for some reason that just feels so much less restrictive to me. When I can take down decorations and just shove them in bins and swap them out with the other decorations that are up, and or I can move things around where if I want, particular shelves to be empty, I can easily move stuff around. It almost feels like cheating to me compared to, like, even putting away laundry. I'd say most of your clothes are in labeled bins. So first of all, that's really helpful because I can put your laundry away pretty much no problem because everything is in labeled bins. But that's not a chore that I particularly love to do. But for some reason, throwing the stuff in bins doesn't seem as difficult as like pulling out a dresser drawer and putting everything in there. And it's the same mechanism, really. It's the same process that you're going through. But for some reason, it feels different. I don't know if it doesn't feel as grown up, perhaps, to my system, and maybe that's why I don't have a problem with it. But it just feels very different. Even in our linen closet, we have labeled bins in our linen closet. Before, we used to just have the piles of like washcloths and towels and things that would, get kind of unruly. But now everything is labeled bins. Even just throwing stuff in those bins, it doesn't feel as much like a chore as, I guess, putting things away when those things are harder to access. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but like the difference to me between putting clothes away in bins and putting clothes away in a dresser is significant. Does that make any
Mhm.
sense?
Oh no, it totally makes sense. I mean, it could be anything. It could be the level of knowledge and interaction that you need to pull up from your working memory, which, that can be a challenge. Or it could be the fact that it's a different system than the one that we were forced to do when we were younger. Or it could just be that it's colorful and nice. Like, you know, you rarely get a beautiful multicolored dresser. And if you do, it's probably going to take a goodly amount of effort and a goodly amount of money. But I can just dump my socks into a more fun colored bin and move the little label thing, and bam, I have a cool colored thing for my socks.
We did go through that. When we started buying bins, everything was black.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point, and I don't know if we were trying to be like mature, grown up, married people or what, but at some point we hit on like, hey, we go see flowers in nature. Like, we love color and we look at all this black all the time. This can't be good for our mood. So then we just replaced all the black bins with, we have colors and patterns. We have some beautiful ones that I almost hesitate to use because they look really nice and really fancy. And then, we have some sports themes. So it's like we have all sorts of different ones. So yeah, we definitely have been through kind of both extremes on that, in terms of they could be loud and colorful and fun, or they could be very understated and kind of blend in, which is what we were doing first, when we were so grown up 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think also a big part of it for me was starting transitioning
Mm-hmm.
and just having an endocrine system that's running on the correct hormones. Colors are prettier, and I'm allowed to like pretty things. Like in the before times, I found a certain set of short top black crew socks, and I bought like 50 pairs. And so I just had the same pairs of socks forever. And because they were all the same, I didn't even have to pair them. And then you have, a handful of long socks for really cold stuff. But for the most part, it was just the same black socks every day. And then post transition, I did the same thing where I got the same kind of socks that I like and are comfortable, but I got them in a whole bunch of different colors. And now I can wear two different colored socks and they're still the same size, length, and fabric. So it doesn't drive me crazy. So having
So
multicolored bins definitely got more fun in the past couple of years.
yeah. And you can get fancy with them, like make them into nice patterns and things. I tend to my my decorative approach, I think is called random. And so you just never really know what you're gonna end up with. But what I like too is that I can use the shelves for decorating space, or I can use them for bookshelves or whatever. They're very versatile. So you don't have to have bins in them all the time. And that makes it nice too, because yeah, I like putting up holiday decorations. It's one of those things I did not know about myself and I did not know that I would enjoy, but I really do. And that is a hobby that could definitely be overwhelming. The packing, and getting stuff out, and that could definitely make it so that it would not be something that I could enjoy. But being able to throw stuff in some bins and a couple of boxes, and kind of use whatever spaces is available. Like there's just enough, like I said, flexibility to it. I know I've said that about this episode, but it really does matter that you can do a lot of something or a little of something. You can be really, really organized about something, or you can be very general. It's out of sight, but not out of mind necessarily, because you've got things that are labeled, but you don't have to keep looking at the same, ugly bottles or desk office supplies or whatever, because they're still visible, but in a different way, so that that you still have them. So it's just ultimately been a way that we sort of fell into when it comes to how to organize our lives. And it just ended up really working with us to the point where I fell a few weeks ago and I knew I had really hurt my knee when I fell. And I was able to, on the floor, in pain, yell out, "I'm going to need a lot of ice packs. There's a bin labeled ice packs in the living room. We're going to need to dump that out and get all those ice packs in the freezer." And so
Mm-hmm.
to me, if you can remember something in a moment like that, that is a cue that your organizational system has succeeded.
Yeah. And even if you remembered like specifically where they were, but it was a much more like difficult thing, like, oh, they're in the closet on the right side at the fourth shelf down on the right behind the rock climbing gear. That's annoying. That's a lot of work. But like, hey, there's a bin in the living room that says ice packs. Okay, I can walk into the living room and do a quick scan and that one says ice packs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it makes it so that I'm not the keeper of the information about where things are. I think sometimes that happens. I've noticed that in
Mm-hmm.
other married couples where one person is the organizer of the home and that one person knows where everything is, and the other partner is almost helpless in a lot of situations, not because they want to be necessarily, but because they do not have the magic information. So having everything out, you can send me to, "Hey, can you grab this tool or this craft thing or whatever?" It's in the living room, it's in a bin marked, whatever. That's a lot easier than saying, "Hey, can you go dig this thing out of my tools or out of, my nail polish container?" It's like, that's overwhelming to me. But if it's
Mm-hmm.
just "Hey, can you go," or even, "Can you just bring the bin to me?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I can grab the bin and bring that to you and you can find what you need. So it allows for more like collaboration, I guess, or just more people are able to participate in the workings of the household than just the one person who knows where everything is. Because everything is in a bin somewhere.
Yeah, bring me the bin is a really good point. Like, yeah, I've got a bin with, I don't know, like 30, 40 little tubes of acrylic paint. And if I need one specific one, I don't have to tell you to go find me the burnt sienna. No, not that one, the thicker one. Just, hey, could you grab my bin of acrylic paints? It's on top of my dresser thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's
Yep.
one to the left and two up from panties. You can tell because there's label on it that says acrylic paints.
Well, it is nice too when if you are doing any kind of craft thing or whatever, you can bring the bin of stuff to wherever you are. You don't have to if you don't have a designated area for things. And sometimes, if we're in a small space, we very rarely have enough space to store items near where we would want to use them, because where you're going to be using them is going to be wherever that happens to fit when you start doing that project. So being able to bring things over and is nice. It's also good too because we have empty bins that we use. So one of the cleaning hacks for people with ADHD that people talk about is clean a room, but don't leave that room, because I am definitely famous for going to clean something and then that'll take me to the washer, which will take me to the bedroom, which will take me to the bathroom. And you can tell where I've been because all the cabinets are open, all the drawers are open, the washer and dryer are probably open too, and nothing is finished. But if you clean a designated area and don't leave that area, then you can use an empty bin for, if I'm cleaning my desk, that bin, anything that doesn't belong on my desk is going to go into that bin. That becomes another step, a secondary step, but it keeps me in this area. So you can, at the very least, get a project accomplished rather than doing hundreds of little bits of projects all over the house. So you can use bins. That way, if you have stairs in your house, you can have a bin at the bottom of the stairs that for stuff that goes upstairs. So whoever takes the next trip upstairs can bring the bin upstairs. There's a lot of different ways to use them to kind of help in getting, it's sort of like finding that homeostasis between where your tolerance for mess, wherever that is, you can kind of meet that, but also you don't have to overtax your executive function to get it there, and kind of find that nice line that keeps your brain happy.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny that you said the clearing off your desk thing, because there's at least 2 bins on the shelves above my desk because I'm in a closet. Those bins were just stuff that's on my desk that needs to not be on my desk anymore. Like, I need access to the space. I'm going to need that stuff at some point, and I don't really have the spoons to be putting everything away where it goes. So that stuff just all goes in the bin. And later on, when I'm like, where's that thing? I thought it was on my desk. I'll check the bin of stuff that used to be on my desk.
At some point, I do have a couple of bins that are stuff that needs to be sorted. At this point, I could probably just throw it away, because if it's stuff that needs to be sorted and it's been over a year, then it's probably okay. But
well, you don't got to throw it out. That's just where that stuff lives now.
That's just where that stuff lives. I mean, technically, it follows my rules. It's in a bin and it is labeled.
Yeah,
so
it's got to work.
So yeah, that's the bin system.
The last part I think we want to touch on real quick is that we have more empty cubes than we do bins. And part of that is awesome, because then if you have a fresh bin of stuff that needs to go away somewhere, you just pick an empty cube and toss it in there. But, and our, people actually watching this video, or our wonderful subscribers on the Patreon, can see that behind Jessica is a 3x4 section of empty cubes, into which there is seasonal decorations. And those change through the seasons because it's just a bunch of little white shelves if there's nothing in it. So if you do have bins and stuff, you can kind of move them around, and suddenly it's display space for decorations or art or, anything that you want to show off. I can see that it's football season right now because your Packers display is out proudly. Apparently, we're not going to talk about that.
We don't talk about the Packers this week.
Okay, we're going to not talk about the Packers this week. Well, this has been very helpful and educational. She's just glowering at me. Oh yeah,
I'm sure they could feel the glower through the audio medium.
Oh, One last thing, the little labels that we talk about are just little plastic pucks that work like dry erase boards. So you can just wipe off the label and then redo it if that is no longer applicable. Anyways, I think that'll just about wrap it up for this episode of Gifted Kid, Messy Adult. Jess, where can people find out more about you?
They can find out about all about me at CoachJessicaMichaels.com.
If you like the show and would like to support us, please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe and rate us on YouTube at Gifted Kid Messy Adult. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram and most other non-Nazi ran social medias at the Neurodiverse Workplace. If you'd like to support us financially, you can find us on Patreon at the Neurodiverse Workplace, where subscribers get access to all kinds of bonus content, curated memes, behind-the-scenes shenanigans, voting on future topics, and you can help keep the lights on here and at home while helping us provide free resources and support for our fellow neurodivergent adults. If you'd like to suggest a future topic or just say nice things and give us that sweet, sweet external validation, please email us your thoughts, questions, or praise to giftedkid@messyadult@gmail.com. You can also support us by checking out our GoFundMe to help pay for our medical expenses. I am held together by the equivalent of medical duct tape and spite. There's a link in the show notes, or you can just search Jess and Ellie's Fight for Health. Oh, yeah, and if you want to find me, you can find me at ellimichaelsproductions.com for some awesome video production for you and your small business, or just you by yourself. Anyways, until next time, take care of each other out there. And then Jess says, bye. She's like walked away from her desk, and I can't stop the recording from my end. So I guess I'll just leave the meeting. Okay, bye.